So Alania was a beautiful young woman, and it's a shame that she had to go out the way that she did. What's up, guys? Iceman here. Welcome to Chilling Tales. What you're about to witness is one of the most grotesque bear attack stories that I've told on this channel yet. But before I get into it, I'd like to thank you all for your support. And if you will, like the video, subscribe to the page, and paw that bell so you're notified next time I post a video. And blessings to my patrons. Links in the description below. So this girl, she lived not far from Yellowstone. You think they would have known better. She grew up in a household that was broken, to say the least. Now, there wasn't any abuse going on there, not direct abuse anyway. But her mother was addicted to painkillers and alcohol. And her father was in some horrible work accident, and he got all sorts of compensation from his job. So they ended up building this beautiful house not too far from the Yellowstone National Forest. But they struggled. And Alania had a few siblings, 2 brothers and an older sister, all of which moved out of the house eventually and sort of paved their way or whatever. But Alania they had later, so she had this sort of disorder. There was something up with her. She was somewhere on the spectrum of autism or whatever. I know that there is a tendency, if you have a child later on, like if, say, the mother's like 45 plus years old and they still conceive, sometimes those kids have a higher chance of having something a little, of being on the spectrum, you know what I'm saying? So that's Alania for you. Now, she was able to drive, she was able to work, she basically just entertained herself all day. She worked at some little hardware store not far from the house, which is where this nasty boyfriend met her. This guy was a playa. This guy was a thug. This guy had tattoos running up and down his neck. He was on tether. Just a real piece of shit. And I mean, I'm not saying all the guys who are like that, but it's just the way that this guy handled things. It kind of grosses me out. So basically, the area, of course, was known to have bears, right? You'd see black bears coming through their property. They had several acres just behind their house. Some of it was just rugged land with trees, a little bit of field that sort of expanded into what is Yellowstone. So you have the beautiful mountainous ranges in the back. Just a very, very settling environment, aside from, say, some of the risks, which we're going to get into. So black bears, as I've described many of time on this channel, are known to eat their victims alive. They're a bit more opportunistic than, say, a grizzly. A sow grizzly generally will only attack if she's feels like her cubs are at risk. If you spook her, walking down a trail or whatever. In those sort of incidents, a sow will attack. Now, a male Bruin is a different story, and that's the sort of bear that came in contact with Alania, which is very unusual. Some speculate this bear was hungry. Some speculate it was starving. Some speculate it was just old and decrepit and just unable to fend for itself. So it took advantage of this opportune time. But Alania had a few episodes growing up. Now, she was about 23 years old when this incident took place. So the years prior to that, she loved the animal. She had all sorts of pets. She had a cat, and she'd take care of the cat. She'd take it to the vet and have surgeries done to it in its later years, and just she loved animals. She had a little, a chameleon or something? She had a chameleon in her room. She had a couple dogs, one of the St. Pyrenees or whatever you call them. That would sort of encompass their property. But where the attack took place was several miles out, where her dogs wouldn't venture. So this guy that met her at the hardware store, he started getting Alania, well, he started getting her doing bad things, for one. And he would take her out in the woods because he lived with his mother. He didn't have his own place. So they would often, he'd set up a tent a couple miles from Alania's house where her parents lived. And her parents were always out of it, right? They were drinking, they're on the drugs. So they weren't really paying much attention to what was going on. So this guy, and I don't really want to name him. Maybe I should name him. I mean, he's a real jackass, you know. I don't think I'm going to say the name. I mean, maybe in another video, but for now, we're just going to call him Ryan, all right? Ryan would set up a tent a couple miles out, and he wouldn't lure her over there. I mean, the girl was able to make decisions for herself, right? Like I said, she was able to drive. She was able to work a job. She had consent, if you will. Maybe it was kind of borderline where, you know, should the parents be making these decisions? But she had her own consent. So this Ryan guy, I think, was taking advantage of that. And throughout the couple of months that he was leading up and knowing her, he would take her, he'd have her meet him out in the woods, right? And they'd have their little camping episodes, and he'd request she'd do this and that. And often she'd leave and she'd tell her parents she was sleeping over at her friend's house. But of course, that was all just a big crock. But it was one of those nights where Ryan started losing interest in her. And he, in some occasions, would bail on her, right? Like they'd plan on meeting on the weekend or whatever at night, and he'd often be there ready to go. But there was this one night in particular, and it wasn't unusual of him, where he just didn't show up. So Alania walks down these dark trails, just the sort of the willow trees, and it was almost a tunnel through the woods, and she'd kind of trot through there with a little basket, a little sundress, a little sun hat. Have her little picnic basket kind of ready to go, maybe bring some snacks for Ryan. And she made it to the tent, and Ryan wasn't there. Now, Alania, of course, to an extent, took this in an emotional manner, right? She was like, what did I do? Is it my fault he's not showing up? What happened to this guy? So she would just sort of wait for him as the night grew darker. She'd start whistling and stuff to the raccoons, other animals. She'd feed the animals. And then it just started getting real dark, and she knew it was time to go home. On her way home, she heard something following her. Just some sort of, she heard the sticks cracking behind her, the twigs. Right? The snapping of the sticks and all that. And she looked around. She's like, hello? Ryan? To no answer. And Alania did some weird things growing up with bears. There was one situation that her brother told about later where her brother was kind of protective of her. She stuck her hand out in front of a cub, and she actually touched it on the nose. And the sow mother was only about 30 yards away. And the mother was really on edge, just sort of acting like it wasn't paying attention to her, but it was probably about to attack. You know, it was probably about to kill her. I mean, it's really unusual we could get that close to a bear. I think that even the bears knew there was something wrong with this girl. That probably wasn't the only episode with bears, but that's one of them that her brother made note of. So Alania now is walking down this dark trail, and she hears the cracking of sticks behind her. She cries out to her boyfriend, Ryan, is that you, Ryan? Hello? To no answer. Now this one was a skinny bear, but a rigid bear. Very tall bear, very big hump on the back, male grizzly Bruin. Wasn't very heavy, probably about 400 pounds. So, I mean, it's bigger than your average black bear by quite a bit, but it wasn't humongous for a grizzly. And this rigid bear just sort of gazed down the trail at her with its head low, its ears low. And that's when you know that something's coming. When a bear looks at you with its head low, and its eyes down. Like it's up to something. And it's usually meaning business. You'll often see them with their ears up when they bluff charge, right? They'll bluff charge and then they'll dash away right when they get to you, and because they're trying to scare you off. This one was watching her, and I think that some of these bears, I mean, in some of these attacks that I've gone over, it seems like they perceive humans quite well. And I think in this situation now, it often is women who are attacked, all right? Especially with black bears. But of course, this situation isn't a black bear, but there's sort of a parallel, I think. I think that bears can sort of read the body language, and they can kind of know that this one's a bit more nimble than the others. You know, this one's a bit smaller, doesn't have that masculine energy or whatever. This one's less of a threat to me. So if I wanted to eat it and kill it, I probably could. And I just can't help but wonder if that's what was going on in this bear's mind before it made its move. And, you know, just like the Timothy Treadwell one. It was a skinny brown bear, starving, probably out of the hierarchy. And it was getting close to the end of the year. But Alania heard this thing. And she stopped to listen. Didn't see anything. And she saw almost this sort of silhouette of something. Just this grizzled creature standing about 5 feet tall at the hump, just sort of looking down the trail at her. And Alania, she turns and runs, right? And she drops her basket. And she's running through the woods, and she hears something galloping after her, just a boom, 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 boom. And she's getting scraped by the sticks and just trying to navigate through the weeds in the wood, and she's headed in the right direction. The moonlight's coming in. You know, she should have been home, but she hears just this galloping creature behind her, and she can almost feel the tremors that it's making on the ground. Just it's getting closer and closer. And that's when it crashed into her. Not from the back, but from the side. Just came crashing like a linebacker just tackling somebody. And it took her skinny little carcass to the ground and just started digging into her like she was a root. Grabbed her by the neck with his jaw and just flung her around. And her body was just getting dragged out by this thing. You know, her arm just flailing all over the place. I mean, the scene looked wretched. It looked like a tractor went through it. You know, just a rototiller, just chewing up all the dirt and all the grass. But it just began digging into her like she was a stump or something, full of bugs, you know? Just these massive yellow claws. These massive bacteria-ridden, blood-curdling claws. Because that's what grizzly bears will do. They'll dig into the roots, they'll forage. Right? A lot of their diet is comprised of just shit that they find in logs and dead wood. So that's what sort of it was. I think that's what it had going on here. Now, it didn't fully eat her. It only partly consumed her. And that's another pattern that I've noticed in these attacks, is I think that the bears, they find humans distasteful. There's something about them, and they know that they did something wrong. Argue me in the comments if you want, but I think they know that they've done something wrong when they kill a human, because they always act so damn weird. All right, they don't act like this when they kill something else. I mean, they'll shy away from the scene, and they'll be like, what the hell did I just do? And they'll start kicking dirt over it, and they'll piss all over it, and then they'll walk away. But then they'll just feel like something's off, you know. And then the search party comes out. And the bear is just always acting something strange. And that's what was going on with this bear. I mean, Alania, her little dress was just ripped up into her pale white skin. You could see the festering wounds. It's like it sort of meshed with her carcass. Like the dress just went into the wound. And it was a white polka dots and all that. And it was just bloodied up, just ripped to shreds. This poor girl, and her skin was almost yellow after this attack. Partly consumed. The woman... Now, I don't know if we could blame... I mean, where the hell was Ryan, you know? He was an adult. The guy was 27 years old. You know, what's he doing leading this girl on? There was no lawsuits made, but I mean, I'm just saying, she should have been kept track of more by her parents. Her parents should have vetted these guys more. They should have been like, are you really going to so-and-so's house? But I don't know. Let me know your thoughts on those matters in the comments below. But this was a predatory attack. Partly consumed her body. Girl was ripped to shreds. Blood everywhere. The bear was shot dead. But, of course, it doesn't change anything. That's the thing, though, is you got to be on the lookout. You got to be prepared. You got to have the pepper spray. You got to have the hand cannon if your state allows for it. Mine does. You know, so I take the hand cannon with me. I take it with me around town. I got a permit. But, I mean, I live in Michigan, and there are black bear attacks here, especially in the Upper Peninsula of the state, which I go to sometimes. It's been a while, but I go there, and I will post some videos on Patreon next time I go there. Maybe I'll find some footage of bears and so forth. But let me know what you guys think about the story. More to come on this channel, but it's just another reminder to be cautious in bear country. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace be with you.